Have you ever had someone say straight to your face that you're too sensitive? Not in a gentle way, but in that half-joking, half-serious tone that suddenly makes you feel like an old phone. One small touch, and it starts vibrating nonstop. And the ironic part is that this comment usually shows up at the exact moment when you're genuinely trying to understand someone else. Maybe you've experienced something like this before. A sentence that seems completely normal to someone else ends up staying in your mind for the rest of the day. A brief look during a conversation is enough to make you wonder if you did something wrong. While other people walk out of the room and forget the conversation, 5 minutes later, you're still replaying every tiny detail in your head like a detective investigating an emotional mystery. And then you start hearing the familiar lines. You're overthinking. Don't be so sensitive. It's not a big deal. Over time, those words start to feel like an invisible label stuck on your forehead. A label that says, too sensitive. And if you hear it often enough, you might begin to believe that something is actually wrong with you. Maybe you should feel less. Maybe you should become a little colder so life would be easier. But here's an interesting truth that very few people ever tell you. The people who are often called too sensitive are usually the ones who can feel the world the most deeply. They're the first to notice when someone is sad, even though that person is still smiling. They can sense the mood of a room changing before anyone else realizes it. And sometimes, because they see so much and feel so much, they also end up being the most misunderstood. If you've ever felt like a stranger in this world, simply because you experience things more deeply than others, then stay with this video. Because in the next few minutes, you might discover that the problem isn't that you're too sensitive. Maybe you're just seeing things that most of the world has never learned to notice. And if right now you're thinking that this video describes you perfectly, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Because in the next part, we're going to reveal something about the brain of sensitive people that 90% of people have never heard before. There is something quite strange about sensitive people. They are often the ones who understand others the fastest. Yet, they are also the ones most frequently misunderstood. If you've ever walked away from a conversation and suddenly wondered whether you said something wrong, or felt that something was slightly off, even though everyone around you was still laughing and chatting normally, then you might be experiencing the world the way a sensitive person does. Imagine a very familiar situation. You're talking with someone and suddenly their response becomes a little shorter than usual. Just a little. Most people might not notice anything, but in your mind, an emotional radar immediately switches on. Something has changed. Their tone sounds slightly different. Their eyes seem to look away for a moment. And before you even realize it, your brain has already started running a long series of analysis, like a movie with dozens of episodes. You start wondering if you said something wrong. You replay every sentence you just said. You analyze each reaction they had. Meanwhile, the other person might simply be thinking about dinner or remembering an email they forgot to reply to. And then what usually happens, you tell someone else about it. They smile lightly and say a very familiar sentence. You're overthinking it. That sentence may sound harmless, but if you hear it often enough, you begin to doubt your own perceptions. You start believing that maybe your feelings are not reliable. Maybe you really are too sensitive. But here's the interesting part. The brain of a sensitive person actually works a little differently. They tend to process emotional information more deeply and with more detail. While many people focus only on the content of a sentence, a sensitive person simultaneously notices the tone, the rhythm of speech, the pauses, and the atmosphere surrounding the conversation. It's like walking into a room. Some people only see the tables, the chairs, and the lights. But a sensitive person can feel the energy of the room. They can sense when there is tension, when there is joy, and when someone is quietly trying to hide something. This may sound like a small superpower, but sometimes that very superpower becomes a burden. Because when you feel more, you also have to process more. A joke might simply be a joke to someone else, but to you, it may touch a deeper emotional layer. A brief silence might stay in your mind for hours. This is why many sensitive people often feel exhausted after social gatherings. Not because they dislike people, but because their brain has processed too many emotional signals all at once. And this is where the misunderstanding begins. Modern society often praises toughness, logic, and the ability to stay unaffected by emotions. People say things like, be strong, don't think too much, don't let emotions control you. But the problem is that this advice was created for people who do not experience the world the way you do. For a sensitive person, feeling deeply is not a choice. It's more like the way their brain is wired. You cannot tell your ears to hear less. And you cannot tell a sensitive brain to feel less. In fact, many psychological studies show that sensitive people often have stronger empathy. They can easily put themselves in someone else's position. They notice emotions that many people overlook. That's why in a group of friends, the sensitive person is often the one who listens the most. They are the friend you call when you need to talk in the middle of the night. They are the person who realizes you are not okay, even when you say everything is fine. But the paradox is that this same ability also makes them more vulnerable. Because when you can feel the emotions of others, you can also feel coldness, indifference, and misunderstanding more clearly. And sometimes that makes it feel like you are living in a world that is just a little too loud for your heart. Maybe you have experienced moments like that. You leave a conversation feeling like you talk too much. You remember a sentence from 3 days ago, and you are still thinking about it. You feel sad about a small detail that nobody else even noticed. If this sounds familiar, there is something important you need to hear right now. You are not broken. You are not weak. And you are definitely not the only person experiencing the world this way. In fact, many creative people, artists, writers, and people with strong intuition tend to have high levels of sensitivity. The ability to feel deeply is exactly what allows them to see beauty, sadness, and the hidden stories beneath the surface of life. In other words, the thing that makes you feel different is sometimes the very source of your strength. But before you can truly realize that there is another truth that very few people talk about, sensitive people often grow up in environments that make them believe their emotions are a problem that needs to be fixed. They learn to stay quiet. They learn to hide their reactions. They learn to pretend that things do not affect them. And this creates a very quiet internal battle. On the outside, they try to appear normal, but on the inside, they still feel everything just as deeply. If you've listened this far and it feels like someone has just read your mind, then pause for a moment and do one simple thing. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel right now. Not just to support this video, but because in the next part, we are going to talk about something that most sensitive people have never had clearly explained to them. It is the real reason why they are often misunderstood in relationships at work and even within their own families. And once you understand that, you might see your sensitivity from a completely different perspective for the first time in your life. There is a truth that is both a little sad and incredibly freeing, and many sensitive people take a long time to realize it. Not everyone has the ability to understand the depth of your emotions, and that does not mean you are wrong. It simply means you are living with a more refined emotional system than most of the world. For many years, you may have tried to change yourself. You practiced speaking less. You tried not to react too strongly. You told yourself that next time you would be tougher, colder, less caring. But every time you tried to do that, it probably felt like you were betraying a very real part of who you are. The truth is that the world actually needs people who feel deeply, because without them, many of the most subtle human emotions would simply go unnoticed. Sensitive people are often the ones who see sadness when others only see silence. They recognize loneliness when everyone else assumes everything is fine. And sometimes, a single sincere sentence from them can make someone feel understood for the first time in years. So maybe the real question is not why you are so sensitive. The real question is why the world has become so used to hiding emotions that sensitivity now seems unusual. If this video made you feel even a little understood, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel right now. And share this video with someone who has also been called too sensitive. They might need to hear this too. Because sometimes, the thing that makes you different is exactly the thing that makes you special.